All right, Cade Meara, it's a fall chat, and welcome to the 9th episode of the Irish Hack, where I'm joined by Kevin Markham once again. Kevin, we all doing good?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks very much. Good to be talking to you.
We're absolutely. We're going for a little bit of a different episode today. So we've previously done 8 different episodes on different courses. So we've episode 1 in Portsalon, episode 2 in Mount Juliet, 3 at Adare Manor, 4 Arklow golf links, 5 Lough Erne, 6 Rosapenna St. Patrick's links, 7th is the Bellinter at Royal Tara, and then episode 8 was the Montgomerie and the Meara at Carton House. I think we've just avoided a little bit of a crisis prior to this call because we both had different approaches to this. So the 3 different approaches that you can do is pick the top 18 holes. The second approach is that you can do like design a par 72 with 4 par 3s and 4 par 5s, taking 18 holes from any of the courses. But the approach that we're going for today, Kevin, is the best of each course, like the best first hole, the best second hole, and we're going to attempt to make it a par 72. I think that's definitely the fairest.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one. I think if you start picking your favorite holes, you can favor one course far too much. And based on our chats previously, I think we both know that there is one particular course that would have several holes in there, and it's hardly surprising. So it's a really nice approach. And I mean, I guess if you're sitting down and having a chat with fellas in the pub, that's the kind of thing that you do because you don't care. You're not trying to put together a course. I think we're trying to be fair to all the 8 courses that we're talking about, or 9 if you're including Royal Tara. So I just felt, this is a good way to do it. And I think every course, they always have a standout hole somewhere tucked away, even the quieter courses. Like Royal Tara, not many people would talk that highly of Royal Tara in terms of, comparing it to Druids Glen and Mount Juliet and stuff. But it's going to have a gem or two. And that's what I hope we're picking out today.
Yeah, the problem is that if one course has a gem and another course has a gem, you're pitting them against each other, which I think we're going to get to probably around the 4th hole.
Yeah.
But which we had a discussion about off air, but we'll bring it to you at the time. All right, Kevin, let's get stuck into it. Today we're going to go through the first 9 holes, and in the next episode 10, we'll round off 2022 by picking the back 9 and just giving an overview of our scorecard. So I'll let you take this one away, Kevin. Your first hole from the 9 courses that I've previously listed.
Well, I don't think it'll be any surprise. St. Patrick's links. I love the first hole. I mean, I really do think it's one of the best opening holes in the country. It's not like it doesn't have the drama of Port Stewart or anything, but just in terms of welcoming you to a course, you kind of stand on that first tee. You don't know what's expected of you, and you don't know what to expect. I just love that. I just think it's a really exciting par 4. It's not long. It's 369 yards, index 9. So I mean, it's a fairly gentle entry to the course, but it still will fool you if you don't do it right.
Yeah, you said that you don't really know what to expect when you're standing on the first tee. Well, I absolutely expected that answer off you for the very first hole because I know, like we've mentioned before, and I can't remember what episode it was, episode 6, where we were discussing St. Patrick's links to Rosapenna. You described as potentially the greatest opening hole in Ireland, which I think is a very fair assessment. I'm going to zag a little bit from your zig, and I'm going to pick the first hole at Arklow links. I have an article coming out this week, maybe tomorrow morning, on which will be Wednesday. This will be released on Thursday, where I described the opening hole at Arklow golf links like to be potentially like one of the most simplistic opening holes in Ireland. There's a simple mound that juts out from the right hand side of the fairway. There's out of bounds all the way down the left, and the green is guarded by just 3 bunkers. I think the thing I love so much about this hole is that it's such a simple, well, for some people, it's such a simple drive, especially if you're playing from the back tees. You get to overlook the entire course, look out with the Irish Sea, and you just hit it's a relatively simple drive as long as you're not duck hooking it into the out of bounds. And you walk up to your ball in the middle of the fairway and you just look up and you're smashed in the face with these contours and the greens, and there's a bunker in the front left and you can't see behind that bunker, and there's a downhill slope off it. And if the pin is on the left hand side, you start to wonder to yourself, how am I getting close to this? And there's a ridge running from the right hand side towards the back. And I just think that this opening hole really sets the atmosphere for the rest of the round in terms of, listen, where the driving's not going to be the most difficult thing in the world, but on your approach shots, you are going to really struggle. And I think it's similar to St. Patrick's Links. We described the greens of St. Patrick's Links as potentially some of the most contoured and most dramatic greens in Ireland. I think at Arklow, it's like maybe a 70% version of what you get there.
Well, it's an interesting comment. I mean, I've always felt that and I think we talked about this at the time, the greens at Rosapenna they feel so unbelievably natural and embedded in the land, whereas Arklows are definitely more shaped, and you can feel that they've been shaped. So, I mean, I'm not saying they're not natural. Obviously, they started somewhere, and several of the greens are natural. We go back to the 14th hole, which is one of my favorite greens in the country. But it's just that Rosapennas just have that natural feel that just lifts the course, and because the entire landscape is so natural. Arklows is lower. It's slightly flatter terrain, so they've built up the greens that bit with the shoulders from the bunkers. But when you talk about it being a simple hole, I know what you mean in terms. It's not easy, but in terms of looking at it, it's absolutely beautiful in its simplicity on the eye, because you see it all from the high tee. And anyone who's listening, no matter what you do, go to the back tee and play that hole. A lot of the forward tee is down below, and it's just not quite the same thing as playing from the back tee, because that's just a beautiful entry to the course.
Definitely. So you play the first hole at St. Patrick's. I play the first hole at Arklow, and we move on to the second. And I'm going to go back to your Zag now. I'll kick this one off. My second hole out of the 9 courses was the second at St. Patrick's Links. I've documented this through tweets. I've wrote an article about it. I think it is the most gorgeous hole to play in the country. There's a waste bunker kind of down the right hand side. The fairway tilts heavily from right to left, and I think Tom Doak, who designed the course, it makes golfers think that they just aim down the left hand side. But the thing is that if you aim down the left hand side, there's a dune that juts out in front left of the green, and you're left with a blind approach shot then. And what he really wants you to do is just hit a fade towards the bunker, which to most people sounds ridiculous. And if you hit the fade towards the bunker and hug the bunker along the right hand side, you have a clear wedge shot or 9-iron into the green. And I think that's what I love so much about it. Is there's definitely different ways to play it. If you're a 22 handicapper, there's plenty of space up to the left hand side. If you're a good golfer or somebody who's interested in potentially architecture or whatever, you aim it at the bunker, knowing that you have this more visible approach. Even that's badly worded, but you get my gist.
Oh no, it's a great hole. It's a great hole, but for me, nothing is ever going to trump the second at Portsalon. I mean, if I was asked for my 18 favorite holes in the country, Portsalon's second hole would be on there. I just absolutely adore it. It's a really tough hole, but for me, it would come out on top of any battle with St. Patrick's on that stage. I mean, it's 397 meters. It's index 3. You're driving over the river and the beach. So you're teeing up, you're high up above the beach when you tee off, and basically the fairway just runs away from you at an angle towards the green, and you can see it all from the tee. I mean, I'm a big fan of being able to see things from the tee as opposed to hidden ridges and things like that. So you've just got to decide how far you're going to get your drive down that fairway, how much of the river you can drive over before you actually end up in it. And then the second time around for your approach shot, it's you've got to go over the river again. And that just makes it incredibly tough. But it's, I think sometimes the way I pick holes is if you walk off with a par, is it something you're going to remember for a long time? And the second at Portsalon is definitely one of those holes. I think if you par it, it's just magic.
Yeah, and I grinded hard over this decision when I was looking at them. In my original draft, I was actually going to have the second at Portsalon as the 11th hole on my 18 holes. This is equally as fantastic of a hole, and yeah, it's definitely just a personal bias. This whole decision making process is completely subjective. I just fell in love with the second hole at St. Patrick's, but I equally fell in love with the second hole at Portsalon. So don't think there's a wrong answer in any of this, but
No.
I definitely see where you're coming from, and I'd say most people would tend to agree with you in terms of the second hole choice there.
Well, I guess part of it, of course, is to say it is such a tough hole that a lot of people just won't like it because they're going to find the water one way or the other. I mean, it threatens both shots, your first shot and your second shot, so much that, you know, if you're a high handicapper, the chances are you could struggle badly to give yourself a really good opportunity of making par. Now, I mean, that's the whole point of the handicap system. If you're a handicap 18, you take that extra shot and lay up short of the river and then chip it over and go for a 5 net par. But, you know, in terms of the sheer drama, I love that. And I mean, I think, you know, St. Patrick's is I don't want to say easier because, as you say, you've got to hug the right-hand side. And that's difficult when the fairway tilts down to the left.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen anybody give out about the second hole of Portsalon. So I suppose that speaks to the testament of how good this hole actually is. And if you've ever been up the north and you've been golfing up there, make your way to Portsalon. I know we hate the term a hidden gem, but it's one of those courses that doesn't get visited enough. I think the second hole is like one of the best holes in Ireland. Definitely one of the best par fours.
Well, the other part of that, I'm just going to say this quickly because it's something I actually saw in, I'm not sure where it was. One of the golf magazines recently did an article on, you know, the courses that you would pay the green fee just to play one hole. And I mean, Portsalon is a fine link, so I'm never going to say you just play the one hole. But if you were passing and you only had 15 minutes, go and play the second hole. Pay the green fee, go and play the second hole, and it's just sensational.
Absolutely. Moving on then to the third hole, and I'll just for anybody who's listening, I will quickly mention again some of the courses that we are considering during this decision-making process. The Portsalon, Mount Juliet golf course at Adare Manor, Arklow Golf Links, Lough Erne, St. Patrick's Links, Royal Tara, Bellinter Course, Montgomerie, and the Meara at Carton House. Kevin, for your third hole, where are you going to visit?
Mount Juliet, par 3. It's a really sweet hole. Looks so good from the tee. I was down there. I'm photographing it a couple of years ago, and I had this heron in the middle of the pond in front of the green, and it just looked the part. It was just such a sweet hole. And I think one of the things for me that I like about it so much is that it has tees on the left of the water and on the right of the water, and there's a difference of probably 60 yards between them. So you're playing almost the same distance, but two completely different holes because the green has got that water that runs right up to the front of it and then sneaks around the left-hand side. So you've got to find the green because there's really not a lot of anything if you miss it. And it's index 6, which explains at 174 yards why and how it's so difficult.
Yeah, and I think as a member, if you're playing there, having those different sets of tees that you mentioned, you just don't know what to expect any day. Like the first and the second hole are like relatively simple tee shots. And then you get to the third hole and you think yourself, oh, it's Jack Nicklaus, it's going to be easy off tee after the first and second hole. You get to the third hole and you're like, whoa, where am I landing this? And the thing we mentioned on the podcast at the time is there's a bunker over the back that you have to pitch back towards the water and land it on a downslope that slopes towards the green. So it's not like you can even just take an extra club and say, right, you know what, it's going to go long here today. So, and then the way I always love to think of things in terms of the average golfer, a very high handicap golfer, there's a place to lay up down the right-hand side as well, or if you want to just bail out.
It's not big though, is it? It's not a big bailout area.
I wouldn't rely on it.
It's still beside the water. You're either in the water or you're in the trees. Take your pick.
Yeah, no, definitely. We're both going to go towards a par 3 for a third hole. And some golf course architects would argue that you should never have a par 3 within the first 3 holes. But we're both better than golf course architects. So the third hole I'm going to pick is the third at Arklow Golf Links. I remember I've played at Arklow twice and standing on this tee box for the first time back in August or something, or July, and thinking to myself, this is crazy. The tee box, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see some of the pictures as we're describing them. But don't worry, I understand a lot of people listen to this on a podcast. The third hole is a tee box that's in between these gorse bushes, so you're not sure what exactly the wind is doing. and there's a mound that juts out from the right-hand side. So a little bit similar to the first hole, that makes the right-hand side of the green partly invisible to the golfer. There's a bunker over to the left-hand side, and like I mentioned on the first hole, you can't see past the bunker because it lands on a downslope. I think just similar to the first hole, you're not sure where you're going to land this ball to get it close. And even if you, similar to your hole there at the third of Mount Juliet, if you take an extra club and go long, you're in a gorse bush. So you have to be really, really precise. And as well as this, it's such a gorgeous setting as well, with the mountains and the rock faces in the background. I think this or the 11th is my favorite par 3 at Arklow Golf Links. I think it's actually definitely this one, to be honest.
Yeah, the interesting thing, actually, I'm actually looking at this now. It's 5 yards longer than the third at Mount Juliet, and yet they're both index 6. So I mean, I think that'll tell you that both holes are tough par 3s, and that's a hell of an introduction to the par 3s on a golf course. And the third at Arklow is brilliant. What I love particularly about it is that parts of the green are hidden on the left and the right by the mounds that you're talking about. But you also have that tier that actually runs. So when you're standing on the tee and you're looking at the green, the tier basically runs in line with your eye through the middle of the green from the front to the back. And if you can see the flag, which you should be able to do, but sometimes if it's left or very right, you actually can't see it. You've then got to figure out which tier you have to be on to make putting easy. It's a brilliant hole.
Yeah, and just when I'm looking at this picture here now, it reminds me a little bit of the fourth at Waterville, and I mean like 30%. But in terms of the right-hand side of the green is almost invisible, but there's plenty of room over there with a little runoff, short and long, and it doesn't make it easy to get up and down from there either. So the wind comes off the Irish Sea on the left-hand side, and you feel like you have to aim at those bunkers, which is the exact same as I felt that day at Waterville when I played the fourth hole. I think that's just the part that I love. It's a dramatic introduction to some of the par 3s at Arklow Golf Links, and yeah, I just love this course, as people know, and they'll find out in my article pretty soon. The fourth hole, okay, I want to say a different one because I'm after changing my mind, and I know which one that you're going to pick. I'm going to change because I want to discuss the fourth at Mount Juliet, and part of the brilliance of the fourth hole at Mount Juliet is the fact that it comes after the third hole, where it's this exciting par 3 hidden over the water, and your heart is racing from that hole. And you walk onto the tee box and you're like, thank God we're onto a par 4 next. And then you're greeted with this narrow corridor through trees on the left, trees on the right, and then the green has water all along the right-hand side. So the part that I love about this is you can hit an iron off the tee or you can hit a driver off the tee. Neither of them are guaranteed to be safe. And it's not the fact that just once you get your drive out of the way, you're happy out and you've calmed down a little bit. The approach shot is equally as tough in terms of the fact that you're battling with the water all down the right hand side and trees all down the left. And I really, really like this hole. And I don't think when I'm reading reviews online or forums, I don't think the fourth hole gets enough praise for what it is. We talked about Mount Juliet before this. The third, fourth, 17th, and 18th, probably my 4 favorite holes in the course. I think this hole after the 18th, I think the 18th is first, and this hole is my second favorite hole in the course. I think it's a brilliant, brilliant par 4.
It's brilliant and it's terrifying. One of the articles I wrote in the past was the toughest 18 holes in Ireland of any, like par 3, par 4, or par 5, and this was the shortest par 4 that was on the list. So I mean, I think it's a terrifying hole, and it's so non-Jack Nicklaus and unlike anything else on the golf course at Mount Juliet, because it's such a narrow, tight channel you've got to hit down. And it's 387 yards. It's not really long, but it's also not short. So you can hit an iron, but if you're hitting an iron, that's going to leave you with a fairly hefty shot in. And the green is so heavily protected by water on the right and trees on the left. It's 2 incredibly tough shots. And I don't disagree with you. I mean, it really is one of the best par 4s around. But in terms of the fourth hole for me, St. Patrick's, the par 5, because of the drama of when you walk off the par 3 third, and this is all designed very specifically so that you leave the green and you walk up a gentle slope to get to sort of like the ridge that then is host to the tee boxes. and you see the entire beauty of Sheephaven Bay and the mountains in the distance, and every part of it is just absolutely incredible. And that's just the views. It's not even the hole, because when you get to the tee box and you start looking at the hole, it's a generous par 5. You shouldn't have any trouble finding the fairway, and if you hit a decent drive, you can get home in 2. And I love the fact that it does that. It just welcomes you so beautifully to the entire beauty of Donegal. It's a cracking hole. I just love it. I played it twice, and okay, so, second time around I birdied it, thanks to some mischievous luck. But it's still a superb hole. It's such a fun moment on the golf course.
Yeah, and this is the thing I was thinking about before this, when I was originally going to pick the 4th at St. Patrick's, is I was listening to a podcast last night with a different golf course architect, and he was on about the fact that so many par 5s nowadays are so liberal with the fact that layup shots are so easy, to the fact that you just hit an iron or an 8 iron or a 9 iron to the fat part of the fairway, and there's no strategic value on hitting the left hand side of the fairway versus hitting the right hand side of the fairway. And when you look at the stroke saver here, there's plenty of room down the left hand side where if you want to lay up, but then you have to overcome this bunker on the left hand side of the green, compared to if you want to have the thing I always talk about is like the optimal approach into the green. The fairway bunker rate 77 yards from the green. And if you want to have a clear shot in the green without overcoming any bunkers, you have to aim your approach shot at that bunker that's 77 yards out from the green. So my point is, you can take the easy layup shot now and hit over the bunker on the approach shot, or you can hit the tough layup shot now and then have a much easier approach shot into the green. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's absolutely true. And I don't disagree with what the architect last night said. I mean, there are a couple of courses, certainly in Ireland, of recent vintage, where the par 5s were exactly that. You had nothing in the second shot to challenge you or interest you or to make you think I have to go one way or the other. And it is a waste. It's just like, I've got this long stretch of ground. I need to make it into a par 5. Let's not worry about the second shot. It's all about that third shot into the green. And yeah, I don't think you have that. You certainly don't have that at St. Patrick's, and certainly not in that 4th hole.
Yeah, we'll have a course that I play quite a lot. I have that exact issue with, and maybe we'll speak about it someday. But it's just a simple. You're not reaching the green in 2 nearly ever, and you're just hitting an iron anywhere down the fairway, and there's no value over hitting the left hand side or hitting the right hand side. But anyways, that's a discussion for another day. The 5th hole, I'm going down to County Kildare, and I'm going towards the Meara course at Carton House. I absolutely adore this hole at the Meara. I think this is my favorite hole on the course. It's you stand up in a tee box, and I referenced the 6th of Lough Erne in the fact that there's bunkers down the left hand side that come into your vision, and they're very, very intimidating, and you think to yourself, okay, you know what, I'm just going to aim it up the right hand side. But if you aim it up the right hand side and spray your driver too far right, you're in these trees. And the thing is that off the tee, you can hit a 3 wood or you can hit a driver, and there's no you mentioned that it's better to hit a 3 wood. I'm not sure where which there's better shot value in terms of, if you hit a great drive, it's brilliant, but you're left with a semi-blind approach shot into the green. If you hit a 3 or 3 wood off the tee box and you lay quite a good bit more back, you're hitting a different trajectory of shot into a green that slopes from back to front, and you have to try and hold the green. Then if you go over the back of the green, there's bunkers there waiting for you, and you're pitching on this down slope that you're potentially going to run off the green again. Yeah. Whereas if you spray a driver off the tee box, you might have 100 yards in, but semi-blind, but at least you can hit a pitching wedge or a 50-degree wedge high enough that you can stop it on the green, and you won't have to worry about it running over the back if you have the right distance. This is just a hole that I'm still, after playing it maybe 7 or 8 times, I'm still trying to figure out what is the best way to play this hole. But I think that's the thing I love about this hole. I mentioned the 4th hole of Mount Juliet is one of my favorite par 4s in Ireland. I think this is a better par 4 than the 4th of Mount Juliet, me personally.
Okay, wow,
I love it that much.
That's quite something.
Yeah,
I don't know that I would go that far, but I mean, I do. I mean, it is my 5th hole too. So I mean, obviously, I like it enough that I'm considering it. But would it be as good as the one at Mount Juliet? I don't think I'd probably go that far. I think there's more. I suppose the thing about the Meara course is it does actually make you think much more off the tee, because at Mount Juliet, you're basically trying to figure out what's going to get me straight down between all the trees left and right, because it's such a tight line. Whereas this, there's no tightness to this at all. You've got loads of room on the left, even if it's, rough. And down the right-hand side, there are some youngish trees, semi-mature trees down the bottom right-hand corner. So you have plenty of room, but you still have to think so hard. I mean, you talk about the drive of the 3-wood, 3-iron in my case. I think if I was playing it tomorrow, I'd be hitting a 3-iron off the tee and hoping to have sort of like 140 yards into the green, even if it's slightly angled away from me, because I haven't gone quite far enough down into the dogleg. So I mean, it's again a hole that you have to think about, and the green, the complex, which just they all sit up quite nicely on a ledge. That's a tricky proposition, just right there. And as you point out, if you go too long, you've then got a real nightmare back onto that green.
Yeah, and that's not a knock against the fort at Mount Juliet. If you ever want to hear me harp on about it, go to the last episode that we recorded, episode 8 of this podcast, and I rant about this hole for about 3 minutes, which will probably stick in your ear, so maybe don't do that. Going to the 6th hole, Kevin, you take this one away. What are you picking for your 6th hole?
I've gone back to the beautiful 6th at Arklow. It's a hole that I should hate because it plays completely the wrong way for me from my draw, but it's just such a brilliant hole. And one of the things I like about it is, and this is one of the key things that I like about Arklow as well, it's when you arrive at the car park, you can get out and you'll see, you can actually look around and you'll see 12 flags. I did count it once from the clubhouse to try and figure out how many greens and flags can you actually see. And the 6th is right there, just below the car park. And you can see the shapes of it and all the bunkering around it. And then, if you're lucky enough and you see someone actually playing it, you realize just how challenging it's going to be, because it moves from left to right. There's a little narrow gap between a couple of low dunes that come in from the left and the right. And if you're short of those, you're completely blind to the green. So you've got to find that gap. And it works for a fade. It's about 220, 240 yards. And then you've got this lovely shot into a green that you've got to negotiate your way through a little maze of dunes, bunkers. And the green is another of the beautiful greens at Arklow. So hands down, I love it. The only other one, actually, I'll let you go on first, because you might say what my other 6th hole was going to be.
No, the only thing I was thinking about here was, I remember playing it last time. Is this the most dramatic green at Arklow?
I tend to think the 5th is probably one of the most dramatic.
Interesting.
I mean, 6 is certainly. I mean, I did a video of it, and that's a good. There you go. You got a shot up there that actually shows some of the shapes to that green. So you could be all over the place. But this is the whole thing with Arklow's greens. There are some lovely big sweeping curves to them, and the 6th is one of them.
Yeah, just as we're looking at this photograph of the 5th green, I'm just reminiscing of the time that I was over beside these white out of bound markers that I hit a horrible shot. But that is a brilliant picture, and it just shows some of the mounds around the greens and how dramatic they can be. You mentioned that you're going to pick one. The one that I'm going to pick, I don't think you probably would have picked this. I'm going to introduce one of probably the best parkland course in Ireland, is Adare Manor, the 6th hole, the par 3 that plays down the hill. I really enjoyed this par 3, and it's a little bit similar to the 14th at Carton House on the Meara course for people who haven't played before, in the fact that it plays so dramatically downhill. There's water all along the left hand side and long off the green, and there's a bunker short right. When you're standing down there, because you're up on an elevated tee box, you can almost see the ridge running through the green, which means that the green looks absolutely massive. But when you see that ridge, you're like, right, I need to make sure I'm on the right level here. And that's part of the brilliance of this green. If you miss the green, which is, like I mentioned, so big, there's a massive runoff in front of the green, whereby you can end up chipping up this massive hill without seeing the base of the pin. I just think it's a really good par 3 that comes in the middle of your front 9. And it just, I just think it comes after part of my love for it is it comes after the 5th hole, where everything feeds down towards the pin. And then the 6th hole is everything feeds away from the pin. And it's just, you're just overturned and you're not sure what to think. But it's a great par 3 in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a lovely hole. It's not easy either. I mean, I can't remember. Where's my card? It's
183 yards.
Yeah, there you go. So it's not short, and you can tell because you're on the high tee pretty early on whether that ball's going to find the green or it's going to find water or trouble. That's actually not the 6th I was thinking of. I was thinking of the par 5 5th at Lough Erne, par 5 6th at Lough Erne, because I that's a beautiful hole on the top of the course. So I thought maybe you'd go with that.
Not to Kevin, you wouldn't believe the number of sleepless nights I've had debating over decisions like these. But yeah, that 6th hole, I've spoken about this on the previous podcast where we discussed Lough Erne. That's a really, really good par 5. And like I mentioned at the time, or we mentioned at the time, it's underrated because of the fact that the 7th hole comes after that Rory McIlroy drove before. And yeah, while we're on Lough Erne, the 7th hole, and funny enough, we're moving on to the 7th hole. That is the 7th hole that I would have picked, the par 4 at Lough Erne. It's part of the dramatics of this hole is the fact that when you arrive onto the tee box, you see a sign stating that Rory McIlroy was the first person to drive this green back in 2010. And there's three really intimidating bunkers all down the left hand side. There's a bunker in front of the green. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure how long the actual hole is.
Well, it's three. I've got 328 yards from the white tees.
328 yards from the white tees, stand on an elevated tee, and you're overlooking this bit of fairway, and in the distance is the water. And it's, from the few times I've played, it's always been downwind, and you feel to yourself, you know what, this is 328. Maybe I can get close to this today. You blast driver, and you blast it into a bunker. You can swerve it out to the right hand side and lose your ball, or you can. And then you can walk down there and you think to yourself, why didn't I just hit a 3-wooder and 5-iron off that tee and give myself a simple wedge into the screen? But it's not often that having such a beautiful hole brings great strategy to it as well. I think that's the thing that I love about this. Is like, even if you stand up there with an iron and you say, you know what, I'm going to aim at that middle bunker in the distance, you can end up pushing it out to the right hand side and losing your ball. You can pull it into the bunker way left, and then you have like 140 yards into the green. There's just so many different ways to play this hole depending on what the wind is doing. And it's, as well as that, the fact that Rory McIlroy drove it before and you have the hole, it kind of raises the atmosphere in the group. I love this hole as well.
Yeah,
I love a lot of holes here.
It's my 7th hole as well. I think it's what you're saying there about like aiming at the middle bunker with the iron. Have you played Strand Hill?
No, not yet.
Okay, well, to put this in your mind, the 13th hole at Strand Hill. Just remember that when you get up there and you stand on the tee box, just prepare to be completely perplexed by what you're expected of you with an iron. But I dug out the card here. I hadn't actually realised, and I don't know where Rory drove from, because the back black tee is 389 yards, and if he drove the green, that is pretty terrifying.
They must put an airplane propeller jet behind them to give them an extra lift, because that's a mighty dig to reach that green. But this is, I suppose, the hole that everybody recognizes, and it takes away from the brilliance of the 6th hole, but it's well deserved the fact just how good this hole actually is, and how similar to the 6th hole at Adare, comes in the middle of, just after the middle of your front 9, and there's so many great things to be said about this. Kevin, the 8th hole, I'll pass the mic over to you again. Where are you going to visit?
I'm going back to Arklow. So the 6th and the 8th at Arklow. I mean, there are so many really nice holes there. I mean, I could quite happily pick 4 or 5 from there. And I haven't picked any of the par 3s, and there are a couple of par 3s I adore. But the 8th is again, the tee box is right beside the car park. I mean, literally, you could take 2 paces and you'll be on the pavement. So people can see, you driving off, depending on how busy the day is. But it's just a glorious, glorious tee shot on a short par 4 that, I always think, the thing I love about short par 4s is that even if you know you're only going to drive the ball 200 yards, there are times when you can dream that you're going to hit it and you're just going to catch it perfectly. And on the links, it's going to run. And if the wind is in the right direction and you're on a high tee box, all those things, if everything was to come together, you could maybe drive the green. And there's something about the 8th that's so incredibly welcoming on the eye when you stand on that tee box, because you can see, I won't say you can see everything because you can't. There are a couple of little tricks to it. But, from that tee box, it really looks so inviting. There are 2 bunkers down the right-hand side that don't really look like they should be trouble. And then you've got this lovely, long, flowing ripple of fairway going all the way into the green. And it's just, the Irish Sea is behind and it's just perfect. It's one of my favorite holes in the country. And I think if it was maybe 40 yards longer, it wouldn't be. But because it's so short, it just gives you that temptation to go after a driver. And, that's usually madness, but I don't think there are many people who are visiting. This is what you're saying about the 7th at Lough Erne. The sensible play is to do an iron off the tee, but how often are you going to be there? So if you're playing it week in, week out, you know full well how to play the hole. But if you're turning up as a visitor, you look at it and you go, oh, I've got to smash this. And that's the same with the 8th hole at Arklow. You really want to nail it.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of the 7th hole at St. Patrick's Things, Rosapenna, and the fact that it's I think that's like 340 yards or something. But you feel like, you know what, this is downhill. If I nail this, I can potentially get close to this. And part of the brilliance of this fairway is the fact that the fairway kind of drops off and then raises back towards the green. So if you do smash your driver, you see your ball roll through the fairway and it rolls down this hill, and you think to yourself, please keep going and pop up for me again on the front of the green. And that is part of the excitement of this hole. And it's exactly what you're saying there. It's feeling to yourself that, you know what, I'm on an elevated tee here. There's the Irish Sea in the distance. If I nail this, I can get close. I think this is a really, really good hole. Now, I'm going for something completely different. And I mentioned to you before the podcast of where I'm going. But I'm coming to the Royal County of Meath, the 8th hole at Royal Tara, because I think it deserves some love. It's a par 4 with a massive tree down the left-hand side to a fairway. And part of the excitement is with the drive and the fact that there's a massive tree and then a little bit, maybe a 10 or 15 yard gap, and then there's a hedge or the trees run all along the left-hand side. And if you want to take the aggressive line, you're going over the tree on the left-hand side or between the tree and the line of trees. And you can see where your ball goes. If not, there's plenty of room out to the right. But the approach shot, there's a ridge running across the middle of the fairway, maybe 50 or 60 yards in front of the green. And it's a blind approach shot. And you walk up there, you bring your yard arm or your range finder, and you find the distance to the pin, and you pace it back to your ball. And you're like, right, you know what? I have to just stand up here, trust my line, and execute this really, really good shot. You hit a 7-iron or a 6-iron, and as you crest this little ridge in the middle of the fairway, you begin to realize where you've left your ball, whether it's in a bunker or it's over the back of the green or in front of the green. And that is I think it's a really good hole, and it comes towards the end of your front or end of the yellow 9 at Royal Tara Golf Club. But I just think it's a really good hole, and I wanted to throw it in here because I thought it definitely deserved a mention.
Okay, well, that's fair enough. I mean, this is the thing, and it's one of the things I love about the courses that we've talked about. They're not all high profile. Like, I guess Portsalon wouldn't be, but for the most part, when it comes to the parklands, we've talked Lough Erne, Mount Juliet, Adare. I'm looking at all the scorecards here, and then the Carton house courses. So, I mean, they're all the high profile courses. So you're going to expect them to have some big holes and some drama. But the smaller courses like Royal Tara and hopefully in the future, we'll talk about some of the other amazing courses that not many people know about. They have some cracking holes too.
For sure. Well, we're going to finish off our front 9 here, Kevin, before we proceed to next week. And I'm going back down to County Kildare, but I'm actually going to the other course at Carton House. It's the Montgomerie course, because I spoke last week about how much I love the 9th hole. I think and obviously this is all out of context, and the fact that we're just randomly designing the 9th. But the 9th hole at Carton House comes after the 8th hole, the par 5, which is a really, really tough hole. The drive's a little bit bland, in my opinion. But after that, the excitement really builds on the 8th hole. And you may get punished with a bogey, but then you walk on to the 9th hole, which is this, I'd like to say relatively short par 4. Bunkers all down the right-hand side. And you have to execute a really good drive. You're hitting to this uphill green that's protected by bunkers everywhere. And you don't see your approach shot land a lot of the time, but you just get your yardage to the green and you think, you know what, Mark, stop being stop doubting yourself. Just get up here, put one good iron shot on this and get back to that pin at the back of the green. And it's a hole that I love. It's what I mentioned last week at Carton House. It's my favorite hole on the front 9. And I just think everything from the drive to the approach shot to the green is pretty dramatically slow from back to front with a run off to the right hand side. It's just a hole that I love at Carton House Montgomerie course.
Now, am I right that there's a bunker off the back, isn't there, that you can't see?
Yeah, it's the worst bunker in the world.
Yeah, so you know, this is the great thing about the Montgomeries. The courses are big, and you know, you feel you've got lots and lots of room. But if you go through the back of that and you find that bunker, which is tucked down quite low, isn't it? It's a nasty little experience if you were to find that.
Yeah. So, and this is what I alluded to last week as well. It's the brilliance of the Montgomerie and the fact that every time you play there, you learn a little bit more and you fall a little bit more in love with the course. First time you play there, and if you go long on that green, you think this is the stupidest thing in the world. How was I ever supposed to know that was there? But you know what? You'll come back another day and you'll remember that, and you'll say, just stand up here, hit a short, but not too short, or else I'm going to roll off the false front. And that's just, it's the great piece of land at the Montgomerie course.
Yeah, it's I mean, this is the thing about the Montgomerie. I think it really is a love-hate course. You know, I've never really heard anyone going, yeah, it's fine. It's either like, no, it's too tough, it's horrible, I hate all the bunkers, and it's too open, it's too windy. And then you get the people who just go, yeah, I love it, it's a great challenge. It's, you know, it really brings out the best golfer in you. So I mean, it's one of those courses that, I mean, you talk about the more you play it. I think if you don't like it the first time you play it, the chances are you're not going to go back willingly. Maybe if you're invited or there's some kind of corporate day or a society outing, maybe you'll just go, oh, look, I'll go. But I think from someone, if you actually really like the course, I mean, you do, I do, it is a question of going back and going, okay, you know, what's it going to do to me this time? Because you've got to work, you've got to think your way around the course. And, you know, you never hit the ball in the same place. You know, none of us do. So it's always going to play very, very differently. And those bunkers just around the green just turn the hole into something completely different every time you play it.
Absolutely. I'll briefly mention this. I ran a poll on Instagram during the week, and I think it was something like 53% of people preferred Montgomerie over the Meara, 53-47 or 52-48, something along that. So it is very, very narrow in terms of people's preference.
Now, I did a poll on Twitter some years ago now, because I was writing an article about the two of them. And I think it came out about 65-35 in favor of Meara.
Oh.
Yeah, big difference, right?
Maybe those people have gone back and fallen in love with the place again. Kevin, how are you finished off your front 9? Where are you going to here?
You know what? I have no idea now, because I had one of them. And now I'm thinking I'm going to go somewhere else. So I'm looking at my list and I can't decide whether I'm going to say it or not. But no, I'm going to go somewhere else. I was going to go with St. Patrick's 9th. It's the index one. It's a brutally tough hole. What is it? It's 460 yards. So I'm not going to go there. I'm actually going to go to Adare because you know, a lot of people talk about the 9th hole because you're heading straight back to the Gothic Manor, and boy, does it leave a dramatic backdrop. There are certain parts of the hole that I'm not mad about, but I just think in terms of the drama of playing the end of the front 9, you know, a lot of people sort of put a full stop behind each 9 and how they play and what they think of each 9. And I think in terms of finishing with that kind of drama and a big, beautiful, wide open fairway, I think it's 80 yards wide at some point. I remember when I played, I was asking the caddy, and he said, "Oh yeah, it's yay wide, and I can't remember what it was, but it's huge. If you don't hit the fairway, really get off the golf course and go and take up another sport. So, I mean, it's just big and it's beautiful. And of course, because everything about the golf course looks so perfect in terms of the fairways and the greens and the way everything is presented. I mean, it looks like you're playing almost a cartoon version of golf. It's so perfect. And I mean, the fairway has been shaped a lot more than it used to be when it was the old Adare, and it just rolls and rolls. And I think that the one part of it that bothers me slightly is that on your second shot, if you hit a really good second shot, it's a long hole. I can't remember what it is. I'll find it here.
568.
It's a long shot. Huh?
568.
568. So you hit a good drive. Say you hit 250, 260. You know, the green is not on really. So you're going to be hitting your next shot as hard as you possibly can straight towards the green. And that is not a good idea, because beyond the ridge, you can't see, there's sand. And I mean, I hit 2 really good shots and thought, hey, I'm going to have a nice wedge into this green, big hole. I can do this. No, it's in the bunker. And, you know, the green's there, you know, unless you're a really good bunker player, you're coming in from, I don't know, probably 100 and something yards. And that's just a tricky shot. But it still looks beautiful. I'm not knocking it. I just feel that little bit is slightly unfair. If you know, you've paid your money, you've turned up to play it, and you hit a good shot, and you suddenly find you're in a bunker that you had no idea was there. Now, if your caddy's any sense in it, told you, don't do this. So I probably didn't pay any attention to him. And the green is beautiful. The green, I mean, the beauty of the 9th green, you actually get to see it when you're walking down to the first tee. So you're walking towards the rather smart little halfway house. And on the right-hand side, there's this green that just looks like it's exploded out of the earth, with amazing shapes and runoffs. That's the 9th green. It's one of the most incredible sights I think I've ever seen. The first time I played there, when it was the new golf course, I kind of walked past and the mouth fell open, and I kind of walked into my golf bag, and I was amazed at what you could see. So that's a fine finish to the 9.
Yeah, I completely agree. Absolutely everything that you say. I will just reference my only criticism of this hole is that I wish you could potentially go home in 2, because it is such a dramatic green in terms of just that drop off that you mentioned over the back. If I fired a 3-wood or a 5-wood in at this hole, you can potentially, now I have gone over the back with like a 9-iron or an 8-iron, but you can go over the back with you could go over the back with your approach shot for your second shot, and that's, to me, that'd be part of the fun. But I do understand it is a means of getting you from the 90 box to get you to that brilliant view in front of the Manor. And yeah, that's my only thing. But it's hard to determine what's a good fairway, but it is actually one of my favorite fairways on the course, and the fact that you can have a ball above your feet, below your feet, off a downhill lie, uphill lie, and it forces you to hit a different type of shot that you might only get in a links course. And it is manufactured, but I don't really mind manufactured golf courses that much, to be honest.
Well, it's index 1 as well. So, I mean, I guess that explains your 5-6 yards. It's 633 from the back tees. So, I mean, you know, it's a brutally tough hole. And I mean, you know, I'm sure when the Ryder Cup comes around, they'll play it from different tee boxes. But from 633, how many of the, I mean, you know, in the singles, you've got 24 golfers, how many could actually hit it in 2? I suspect there's half a dozen who can still hit 633 yards in 2 shots, no problem. So, you know.
Yeah, I remember saying at the Pro-Am, bear in mind there was only 1 pro in each group, and I didn't see one person going for this in 2. Even like one of the players was Tommy Fleetwood, and I saw him lay out to a wedge distance and hit a pitch and wedge in close to about 5 feet, I think. But I didn't see one person even attempt to hit it in 2. So I think it's part of the fact that the fairway is so, like I mentioned, you can have all these different type of lies that you don't have this perfect lie to hit the 3-wood off, that maybe sometimes it forces you to lay up. But yeah, no, it is very exciting and a great end to the front 9, and great decision by you.
Well, I think, I mean, you know, going back to the Ryder Cup, obviously, as you say, you were down at the JP. I mean, it's going to be some fun watching the Ryder Cup and seeing guys missing greens and having to play how they're going to play these amazing slopes. I mean, I imagine most of them will just flop shot it up there and they're good enough to do that. And the cut of the grass, I don't know how tight they'll do it. But, if they had to play any other kind of shot, bump and run, things like that, I think that would be fabulous to see. They shouldn't be allowed any kind of sound wedge or lofted wedge. Just give them a 45-degree wedge and then see what they do.
Yeah. Well, the second day, this is just personal anecdote, but the second day there was the pin was up the back on the 8th hole, the back ledge, and Justin Thomas and Colin Morikawa both missed a short, and both of them tried to play a pitch and run. Justin Thomas executed this beautiful pitch and run that landed on the slope that goes up towards the back and stunned it into it and got it to like 3 feet and made the putt. Colin Morikawa landed on the ridge, couldn't execute the shot, and it came back rolling towards the front of the green. So that speaks to a little bit about what you're saying about the dramatics of the greens at Adare Manor. And I can't speak highly enough. Definitely the most, I keep saying the word dramatic, but the most dramatic greens in Ireland in terms of around the greens and how steep the runoffs are from a parkland perspective.
Undoubtedly.
Yeah, and if people want to listen to that full podcast, they can go back to episode 3. Kevin, this is a ton of fun. I'm sad that we have to break this up, but I think it was a good idea, or else we'd be talking here for 2 hours flat. And people listen to you, but they don't want to listen to me for 2 hours flat.
Well, I don't know about that, but I'll say this: after the front 9, I'm 1 up. So we're gonna
no. Oh, we'll let the viewers decide, or the listeners decide. We can put this to a Twitter poll. All right, Kevin, thank you very much. We'll be sure to get back next week, finish off this, check what yardage our courses are, what par our courses are, and we are golf course architects for 2 weeks and 2 weeks only. So
there you go. We get to do it. Why not?
Yeah. Listen, you can find Kevin on Twitter at Kevin Markham, writing for the Irish Examiner and the Irish Golfer. Be sure to check out his fantastic golf photos at kevinmarkhamphotography.com. We've also shown a few of them during this live stream on YouTube, so if you want to go check those out, you can also find me in all. You got me rattled now after you said that you're 1 up, and I'm a competitive person, so I don't like that. You can also find me on all social media handles at the Plug Lie. Gurmila Motagut, and Kevin, I'll chat to you again next week.
Yep, talk to you soon.